Oh, hey, how's it going? This is Phillip Hocking. I'm doing a recording for this because I think it's the best way for me to communicate my needs. I've taken some time to put my thoughts together. I have outlined basically the reason that I'm having all of this stuff happening in my life is because I'm a vulnerable adult with disabilities that are cognitive in nature. And I'm a male domestic violence abuse victim, and it was just Father's Day on Sunday. I haven't seen my son since the middle of February, and when a male domestic violence abuser wants to hurt a woman, or man, or whomever, they use their fists, right? But when a woman wants to hurt a man, she uses the courts, the police, the systems, and gets them isolated and discredited. And the thing is, it's not even always necessarily like because they're a bad person, it's just because of trauma from the family of origin. And I'm just having a really rough time right now trying to put my life back together in the aftermath of all of this. So I just wanted to start out here with a little timeline. Okay, cool. So, I put this together with my partner, Katrina, right? She had reached out to Matt while I was in the hospital and was doing the best that she could to try to help manage my affairs while I was in the hospital, which the states in the hospital actively were harming my ability to manage my affairs, which is against the law here in Washington. But the problem is when you're having behavioral health issues in 2022, it's just the new human rights crisis of our age. So my goal is an actionable, achievable path forward with hashtag employment that does not conflict with my core values as a human being. And that never had conflicted until very recently. My livelihood has been threatened. I'm behind on my mortgage and other bills due to involuntary hospitalization. Um, and my primary obstacle is I'm unable to obtain a doctor's signature on the return to work paperwork, right? So that's before we get into the how did we get here thing. I want to look here at the DV perpetrators' patterns of assaultive and coercive behaviors. So well, this is here in Washington. This is from the Division of Children, Youth, and Families here, and uh, these are questions that would be asked, but economic coercion. Do they control you through money, access to resources, using children against you, taken or threatened to take the children, interfered with my care of the children? And there was a bogus CPS report that caused this whole thing, right? And the impact of domestic violence on adult victims, the adult injuries, health, anxiety, trauma, housing, employment, access to education, resources, relationship with family, friends, community, and the ability of the adult victim to have personal autonomy, and the ability to parent and to seek help and safety for use. So, when I insisted upon getting a divorce from my soon-to-be ex-wife, the amount of domestic violence substantially increased. But at that time, I had locks on my house, right? But they still had they still had like a lack of consequences where they were trying to um, where am I going here? Help seeking my DV victims. Oh. let's just, I've talked enough about that. We're already a few minutes in here, 5 minutes in. Here in chapter 2, the DV perpetrators come from all groups. This is from the Washington State Courts Administrative Office of the Courts. Sometimes there's a tendency other cultures being more violent than one's own. So, because I had been involved in the criminal justice system, people thought I was more violent, but I've never. I've yelled at my student ex-wife a lot because she was violating my boundaries, wasn't treating me well, but I never coerced or manipulated her, prevented her from doing what she wanted to do. She's always free to leave. But the culture may influence the specific tactics available to an abuser to control the victim. My student ex-wife is a therapist, and I got thrown in the psych ward for 34 days on my abuse. And the thing is, culture may influence the resources accessible. Um, um, Okay, here we go. Yeah, minimization and denial is a self-con. Lines, tax and control. Enlisting others, family, friends, institutions, courts, child welfare, family law proceedings, including with them. And yeah, seek to be in control of others, especially the abused party. Highly controlling the children, use the children to control the adult victim. I experience these things too. She does have amazing qualities. But abused parties isolation, criticizing, isolating, controlling. Oh, victim fear the perpetrators escalating abuse and control. I've experienced that. And the coercive control will increase over victims when things become public, criminal, family law, all that. Victims minimize and deny the abuse due to community barriers. Systems with the power to intervene will not act. And then blocking out the pain. Community focuses on the victim is so loving without considering the very real community barriers of prompt minimizing by the abused parties. And this right here is probably the most important thing. What may appear at first to be crazy behavior is a normal reaction to a crazy situation. My wife took off with my son. She left with my son for a bogus CPS report. And, the assaultive and coercive behavior gets worse when they attempt to get help. I have used so many attempts to get help. And right here, trauma-induced ambivalence. So this is a thing here. I'm being traumatized by an intimate partner multiple times, and I might appear inconsistent, overwhelmed, and I don't know. Like it's as viewing the domestic violence victim's behavior as crazy or in denial. Like I'm having I'm an adult victim here where my entire I'm financially ruined by this whole thing. I'm behind on my mortgage. I got thrown in the hospital. My job is in jeopardy. And it's all because in California we have to have third party claim administrators because workers' compensation in California is such pain, and training, ongoing claim review, bill review to include first aid But right here we have the pre-injury phase, the injury occurrence phase, the claim phase, and then the settlement phase. So the thing is that like I literally would not I would not have housing or employment or anything like that if HashiCorp was not amazing. I'm not ever going to sue HashiCorp because if I can't have employment at HashiCorp, I can't have employment anywhere. But when I got discharged out of the hospital, I was put on 2 grams a day of Depakote. I can't do anything but eat and sleep 13 hours a day and do nothing with that level of sedation and medication, right? So I was diagnosed with autism at age 14, had a traumatic brain injury, 2014, complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Something so amazing about when I first came on HashiCorp was that I was very clear and honest in my website that was on my cover letter, my resume, had my whole grindy recovery story on it. And I had all my repositories with all of my mistakes and my silly, git commit messages. And everybody was like, that's what we're looking for, man. And to me, the fact of the matter is that HashiCorp completely changed my life because for the first time I wasn't being accommodated or tolerated. I actually applied to the one place in the world I thought was doing the coolest stuff. I didn't even know about the Tao and the principles until I got the recruiter responding to me saying, "Hey, you should take a look at this before your interview." And yeah, man, for somebody who's as traumatized and messed up, not because I'm a bad person, but because the same sorts of things that were starting to happen to my kid at his daycare happened to me as a child. My parents didn't have the skills to cope with it, the system didn't have the skills to cope with it, and I endured a lot of trauma because I wasn't given the adequate supports. There was a lot of stigmatizing behaviors, and the whole fact that I have to take days to compile a bunch of information and make a video about this is because there's so much nuance. This whole situation is so complicated, but basically all I need to do to return to work is to just return to work. I can't get a medical provider to sign off on it, and I don't know how to help with that. So my kids' daycare, you know, there was a CPS harassment situation. She filed divorce. I posted stuff on social media, and people called the crisis line on me, but my spouse coordinated it, tried to get me gooned up. And I was almost hit by a car. This guy had no reason to almost run me over, but he did. And there's plenty of space for me to go around. And yeah, I kicked his car, and I got thrown into the hospital where I was cool and compliant going in, but the security officers who can't cut it as actual police who never would have this sort of behavior. I was just tossing my jacket and my belt and barely brushed up against his shoe, and he got all up in my face, and then I was choked out and tased by these 5 guys, shot up with drugs and put in sedation, and I was left in this isolation and confinement where I couldn't even use a restroom without asking for permission. I couldn't get a glass of water without asking for permission. It was 1,000 times worse than county time, actually. And when I was coming off of a 10-year meth and alcohol withdrawal, when I was at Eastern State Hospital, I never got put into isolation or seclusion at one time because I never was treated like that. I was denied resources to manage my personal finances. The hospital caseworker wouldn't help me complete my disability leave for work. I walked out of my house. Everything was gone. Everything was stolen. Kitchen, stove, fridge, microwaves. Then I returned to work, and I found out I could not continue working because I missed a piece of paperwork. And then I booked an appointment with my primary care practitioner. Went to that appointment, and he would not sign off on my return to work paperwork. I told him that I hadn't, taken that Depakote because I wouldn't be able to function at work, and I need to get back to work, right? And I'm doing just fine. Like, I have somebody staying here who's in early recovery who could go out, and try to get a job right now, and he could work. But me, I've been out of the hospital longer than I was in the hospital. I had returned to work. I was beginning, the tasks that were necessary to get back to work, and doctor wouldn't sign off on it. And then Providence called the crisis line on me the next day. I wasn't like yelling or cursing at him or anything. And I think that this has to do with the fact that there was another like massive shooting the other day. And people with severe mental illness like myself are not responsible for things like that. It's really kind of tragic the way that we're stigmatized in the media, and in like people like me. I have been diagnosed as bipolar, even though I'm not actually bipolar. But that's a story for later. Um, but all I was trying to do was get this paperwork signed, and they called the crisis line on me, right? And Dr. Wigger expressed to me that he's not going to sign the paperwork even if I take the medication because he's just dumping it on psychiatry because I don't want a psychiatry patient. But he's been my primary care practitioner for the last 6 years, and every time I've gone in for a physical or for a PCP related concern, he's like, "Oh, do you need any help with anything? How are you doing on your meds?" So it's just that, and Providence discharged to him. So then, when I went to the psychiatric intake, I was recording the session because like I need if these are going to be psychiatrists who are saying I'm manic and I'm labile, pressured speech, and stuff like that could be thrown in the psych ward again. Like first of all, I need to be just like physically at my house. I can't be like going to appointments where they could like glue me up and stuff like that, right? And all of my psychology, psychiatric therapy appointments have all been outpatient in the last several years. I haven't had any hospitalizations or any issues. And, you know, um, when I contacted Larkin to ask, hey, these people are not going to sign this paperwork. They said they were going to call me back. They never did. This was the voicemail that I left, right? Let's see. Hi Cheryl, how's it going? My name is Phillip. Can I please speak with Paris Parker? Yeah, I would be happy to transfer you over to her line right now. Thank you. You're welcome. Hi, this is Paris with the Larkin Company. Sorry I'm unable to answer your phone call. Leave your name and your number. I can give you a call back at my earliest convenience. Thank you. Bye. Hi Paris, this is Phillip Hocking. Just wanted to call to let you know that I am not getting any luck with anybody at Providence signing off on my return to work paperwork. So I was wondering, what do I do to proceed with this? If you could give me a call, let me know. I know you had reached out to me around noon. I'm just trying to run some of this stuff down. So yeah, if you want to give me a call back, it's area code 818-457-6605. Again, 818-457-6605. Thanks. So the response I got comparison to this. Been planning to remain, so that's from before, right? There's all these things going back and forth. But so this was 8 days ago. So I got your message. I was told by your social worker that you will need to have your outpatient doctor to complete any additional forms. That's what the voicemail that I left her said they were unwilling to do. So I really feel like at this point, the HashiCorp principle of pragmatism is something that I kind of would like to invoke. That I understand the reason for third party, actors and everything, but the fact that I'm in the middle of a human rights struggle and a domestic violence situation, I haven't been able to retain an attorney. It's all because I'm autistic and I'm not a mistake. I'm not a tragedy. I have a little excerpt from my favorite TED Talk.
I was bombarded with information. I was bombarded with information about my deficits. Autism causes deficits in social interaction, deficits in communication, restricted and repetitive behaviours, sensory processing deficits. For me, that information just didn't make sense. Finding out that I'm autistic had completely changed my life for the better. How could something that was so positive for me be such a bad thing? So I went back to Dr. Google, but this time I dug deeper. I started to find information about autism that was written not by researchers or other professionals, but by actual autistic people. I discovered a thing called the neurodiversity paradigm. The neurodiversity paradigm is an alternative way of thinking about autism. It describes autism as a part of the range of natural variation in human neurological development. At its very simplest, autism is a different way of thinking. Just like biodiversity helps to create a healthy and sustainable physical environment, neurodiversity can help to create a healthy and sustainable cognitive environment. According to the neurodiversity paradigm, there are no right or wrong brains. All forms of neurological development are equally valid and equally valuable. And regardless of what type of brain you've got, all people are entitled to full and equal human rights and to be treated with dignity and respect. Now, that sounds a bit like a panacea. I know, treating people with dignity and respect. It just makes sense. You might be surprised then to learn that a pretty common way of reacting to this idea is, I don't know. I mean, it's all right for you, but it doesn't apply to everybody. What about this person? They're really autistic. They're not just different, they're disabled. Well, maybe you can't tell just by looking at me, but I'm disabled too. I'm not disabled by my autism, though. I'm disabled by my environment. This is another paradigm shift. The way that we're used to thinking about disability is based in a model called the medical model of disability. The medical model assumes that disability is an individual problem. It places disability within the disabled person, within me. For example, I really struggle with shopping malls. They're loud, they're brightly lit, they're unpredictable, they're full of people. The medical model would say that I struggle with shopping malls because there's a problem with the way that my brain processes that input, because I'm autistic. But there's another way to think about disability. It's called the social model of disability. In the social model, disability happens when a person's environment doesn't cater for their individual characteristics. In the social model, we don't refer to people with a disability. Disability isn't something that I carry around like luggage. Instead, we use the word disabled as a verb. Disability is something that's being done to me. I'm actively being disabled by the society around me. When I go to a shopping mall, I don't struggle because there's something wrong with me. I struggle because the shopping mall is designed in a way that doesn't cater to my needs. If we started designing shopping malls that were quiet, dimly lit, predictable, and sparsely populated, well, I'd still be autistic, but I might not be disabled by shopping malls anymore. Almost everything we know about autism stems from research that's based in medical assumptions and the medical paradigm. We spend hundreds of millions of dollars globally every year on autism research. And the vast majority of that research conceptualizes autism as a problem. Recently, I conducted a study examining how autism research funding has been invested in Australia over the past 10 years. Here's what I found. More than 40% of funding went to genetic and biological research, trying to find out why autistic people are the way we are and if there's a way to prevent it. Another 20% of funding went to research investigating treatments for autism, most of which are trying to find new ways to make autistic people just act a bit less weird. Only 7% of funding went to research investigating services to help autistic people. Why does this matter? Well, around 1 in 50 people are autistic. About 60% of autistic adults are under or unemployed. 87% of us have mental illness. Autistic people are 9 times more likely than the general population to die by suicide. We have an average life expectancy of just 54 years. And we deserve better. In 2012, an autistic researcher named Dr. Damien Milton proposed a new theory. He called it the double empathy problem. And what he suggested was this: maybe autistic people don't actually have social deficits. Maybe we just get along better with other people who think like us. Maybe autistic people socialize better with other autistic people, and non-autistic people socialize better with other non-autistic people. Maybe the difficulties that we see when autistic and non-autistic people try to socialize aren't because the autistic person has social deficits, but because autistic and non-autistic people are both bad at communicating in ways that make sense to the other. Now, to the autistic community, this made perfect sense. But a lot of autism researchers weren't so keen. I guess maybe they didn't like the idea that the whole history of autism research could be based on flawed assumptions. Luckily, in the last couple of years, a handful of autism researchers have jumped on board with the double empathy problem, and they've decided to test it scientifically. In one brand new study by Dr. Catherine Crompton from the University of Edinburgh, they did this using a task called a diffusion chain, which in Australia we know by the slightly politically incorrect name of Chinese whispers. Now, I'm sure you're all familiar with it. You whisper a piece of information around a group of people, one by one, and you try to keep it as accurate as possible. And if you've played, you know that the accuracy part is pretty hard. The first person will whisper a perfectly innocent sentence like, Today I need to pay my rent and get new tires. But by the last person, Donald Trump is president and the world's on fire. Well, in Edinburgh, they played that game with 3 groups of participants. The first group was all autistic people. The second group was all non-autistic or neurotypical people. And the third group was a combination of autistic and neurotypical people. The researchers found that the all autistic and all neurotypical groups were equally accurate in their information sharing. But the combined autistic and neurotypical group was significantly less accurate and less clear in their information sharing. That suggests that autistic and non-autistic people communicate equally well. It's the mismatch between those communication styles that causes the problems, exactly as the double empathy problem predicts. We need a paradigm shift in the way that we think about autism. We need to recognize that maybe acting less weird is not the best outcome for an autistic person. We need services and supports that will help us to live long, happy, and fulfilling lives while respecting our right to be authentically autistic. And we need the kind of work that I do, research led by autistic people that answers the questions autistic people want answered. Because the earth is not flat, and I am not a tragedy. Thank you.
That's pretty much it. But I'm not a tragedy either. And the irony is, when I first started working at HashiCorp, I already had the non-disabled environment that Jacques Houghton describes, right? I had just been invited to join the neurodiversity, on a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, right before this whole thing happened, where this domestic violence became so severe that it really just screwed up my whole life. And I just need a path forward. I can't get a practitioner to sign this return to work paperwork. I didn't record the phone calls because nobody would consent to them. But the phone calls I've had calling around for hours and hours, trying to get someone to do it. It's just, I'm being actively disabled by the medical model, by Providence Health and Human Services, by the state of Washington. If I wanted to take 2,000 milligrams of Depakote and Seroquel a day and live in an $800 a month subsidized apartment, they would be fine with that. But making $250,000 a year at HashiCorp, which I was doing pretty well at until my domestic violence abuser got me thrown to the hospital. And if the only thing that is preventing me from what society and state-sponsored violence managed to attack on top of her domestic violence towards me just because I'm a white man in Spokane, Washington, well, it's pretty crazy that, like, I would have had 1,000 times worse of a situation than if I had you guys in my corner, like you have been this entire time, until I got to the point where I couldn't progress the third party administrator's process. And I fell into a business process exception, and I can't get a deferral or restructure my mortgage that's behind. It's like 3 months behind until I get returned to work. So can you please just tell me what I have to do, what is required by me to move forward and to remediate this process exception. I'm sorry that this took me 35 minutes to put together. The very nature of my invisible disability is not being understood, but I'm not going through a formal accommodation process because if I need that at HashiCorp, which was the only time in my life that I ever felt okay at work, being myself, being authentically me, just because of this one process exception, that sucks, man. But I'm doing the best I can. Um, I, 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 I await further input. Thank you.